Thanks a lot, Dana. I'm excited to be kicking off the virtual boot camp with an important message. Setting sales goals is one of the most important parts of your business as a sales rep, especially with Cutco, since we don't technically have quotas that we have to meet. So Cutco isn't going to terminate our contract if we don't sell knives every single week. But it has to be up to you to be able to sell a certain amount, what you feel comfortable with, what you love to help you with your other goals in life. Now, this message, as I get to the end or the later part of it, it's going to be a little bit technical with a little bit of math. But if you're not good at math, no problem. I'm here to teach you it because this is how it's going to help you break down your goals and what you could do for a week, a month, a year, a campaign, whatever you're looking to do. This is the way that you have to do it, and you wind up working backwards. So it's really cool. I'll show you how, but I want to get into a couple other little things first. I have a little handout that we'll go over. But when you set a goal, it gives you something to strive for, essentially. It makes you hit the phones that extra hour or set those two last appointments on a Monday before closeout. Imagine selling on 2 more appointments per week for a full year with an average order of, let's say, 500. That's an extra 50K in sales and 25K in income over a year just because you were disciplined and goal-oriented. Now with me, I sold 425 in 2019 and about 380 last year without events, about 90% of what I did the year before. But no matter what, my goal isn't to sell 2K every month, but that's a required minimum. Oh, sorry, every week, but that's a required minimum. I have over 4 years straight of selling $2,000 of Cutco. And that's during, let's say, vacations, conferences, family stuff, pandemic. Like no matter what, 2,000 a week, there's no weeks off CPO wise for me. And right now I'm probably about like 6 months of 3,500, whatever it might be. But that's not necessarily a goal, but it's at least a benchmark that I have so that I can help hit my other goals that I have, whether it's personally or professionally. So I have some tips to get started and then a little bit more advanced tips as well. So some of the tips to get you really started when it comes to setting your goals, you have to plan out your phone time and put it in your schedule. It might seem basic, and I'm sure that you've all learned that from your managers, but if it's not in the schedule, it's like it doesn't exist. So with me, I still have phone time in my schedule. Not as much as I used to, but because my business has changed with events and other things that I'm doing, but it's always important to have it in because if it's in there, that means you have to do it. If you just tell yourself you're going to phone tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and you don't do it, you don't feel as bad because it wasn't in your schedule. But at the end of the day, you still don't feel that great. Nobody ever wants to really pick up the phones and call those cold leads or the old leads, but that's what leads us to our sales and our profits and our CPO numbers, which is awesome. So one of the other things that I hadn't used in a while, but I actually picked back up last year during the pandemic to make me feel like I was doing even more things that were productive is just having a call log. So you could see your efficiency, like how many calls is it making you or is it taking you to book those 5 appointments, 10 appointments, 20 appointments for the week. The best phone times are typically between 8 and 10 a.m. during the week and 5 and 7 p.m. before and after work, essentially. One of the things that I have noticed is that even though it is tougher for people to answer the phone or for us to get people to answer the phone because of robocalls and cars extended warranties and everything, more people are home, so you are getting more answers typically, at least in my experience. Now, when it comes to setting a goal, you want to set a big goal, but also a realistic goal. In my opinion, and in most top CSPs' opinions, it's better to go for, as an example, a 20K push and fall short at 15K than go for a 10K push because you could hit it and sell 11K. So it's like go big or go home. So even if you didn't hit your goal, you still learned and you sold more than you would have if you just undercut yourself. When setting a goal, again, for a week, month, campaign, year, it doesn't matter. When setting a goal, you have to have a plan of attack. So what are you going to do to get that CPO? Is it going to be demos, service calls, service events, traditional events, sale promotion, How much is going to come from each? With Cutco, we have so many different layers to get CPO from that you have to see where it's coming from and where you're going to be able to uh, capitalize the most on each, depending on time of year, time of week. Could be during the week or your weekends for events. Whatever it might be, plan it all out and see where it's going to come. And a lot of the things that I'm saying, you'll probably notice it has to do with more of like push periods, because that's where I do my most planning, besides obviously for a year's worth of planning for a full calendar year. So another little tip that's quick and easy, listen to the free audios available with people who've had massive push periods. Brandon Brown and Andy Jonte come to mind because they had the 100K push periods. Obviously, a lot of planning, a lot of skill, a lot of prep work, a lot went into that. And that's why Josh Mueller is always there to interview people like that whenever somebody's doing great in the business. You should always be learning. So you have to be a master of your craft. Before you can have big sales goals and aspirations with Cutco, you also have to learn the other huge parts of our business. So that includes cookware, flatware, accessories, hunting, business gifts, realtor. There's so many ways for us to get that CPO, but you have to be able to capitalize on all of them and have a great elevator pitch on everything, as well as know it in detail. Now, for some of you that are newer, that might go over your head a little bit, even a couple of things that I just said, because you don't even know that they're a program. But when you stick with Cutco long enough and you realize how many different ways there are to sell and how to grow, you'll realize that you're in the right place. So when it comes to this, your average order will increase and it'll make it much easier for you to hit your goals once you do capitalize on all these different layers. Doubling your average order is the quickest way to skyrocket your income, and it's in the same amount of hours. Because if you go to an appointment that takes you an hour and you sell an ultimate set instead of a homemaker, how much more did you make? You made another almost $1,000 worth just because you were able to, like I said, have your skills be at a higher level to be able to close higher as well. So some of these other things that I want to go over as well, excuse me, some of these more advanced technical tips that I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to share my screen to show you how to actually do it. But more advanced technical tips on how to actually plan your sales goals or your push periods is first, you have to know your average order. You have to know your closing percentage on the phone. How many appointment schedules per call is made? Knowing your closing percentage on actual appointments. After doing that, that's how you can find out your average order. And now it's easier to set a goal since you know more of your numbers and specific details. If you just pick a goal like 20,000 without a plan, that's just going to be you just making some phone calls and trying to sell as much as you can, where that's not always going to be, or never, it's rarely going to work out well for you. Spreadsheets are a huge must. I use them for everything, especially big pushes. So I know every single customer that reordered with me last year and how much I sold in past customer business. Huge milestone for me was selling almost 50% of my CPO last year was past customers. And for me, who's only been doing it full time for 4 years, I thought that was huge and I was super excited to see that. But I only knew that because of the spreadsheets that I keep. Spreadsheet again for everything, especially for sale promotions. So you don't let anybody slip through the cracks, which is what I learned originally a few years ago with Sale Promo Max with Josh and Luke. So my hot list has everybody who's reached out to me, interested, things that they might like, whatever it is, because you might lose them in the text or your email chain, but you have everything all in one spot. And that's going to help you hit your sales goals because maybe you forgot that person that wanted a homemaker and you call them on the last day. So being organized is always super important when it comes to setting and achieving your goals as well. So if you give me a quick second, I'm going to go pull up my thing that I want to share my screen with you. All right, so see where we're at. Sorry about that. Looks like we should be good. All right, so everybody should probably see my screen. Let me know in the Q&A if you can't. But when it comes to calculating your averages to set the right goals, I was just going to explain this, but I realized it would be so much more beneficial to literally go through it with you guys, especially for people who aren't that great at math or it's not their strong suit. But I have 2 pages of stuff to go over with you, and this is also going to be sent out to you after the conference as well. So you go back to it and reference it. But knowing your average is one of the most important tools to have in your business because your averages help you determine and project how much you can or will sell in a certain time frame. So you can use your averages to figure out your sales for, like I said, the week, month, and year. And they're especially helpful during the push periods. So below are some of the equations I was talking about for you to implement to your business that will help you predict and ultimately sell the amount of Cutco that you set your mind to. So when it comes to phoning, you have to calculate how many phone calls you make and how many appointments were actually booked during the phone jam. So an example here, if you made 100 calls and booked 10 appointments, that means you could expect to book 1 appointment for every 10 phone calls because 100 divided by 10 equals 10. So if you want to book 5 appointments in a particular phone jam, you should expect to make at least 50 calls because 10 times 5 equals 50. Now, please stay with me, guys. I know it's going to be a little hard because it's like you're back in high school or college, but you need this before you could really learn how to sell a ton of Cutco, at least when it comes to goal-wise. Yeah, everybody could go out and sell an ultimate to the rich uncle, but when it comes to staying consistent and really being successful in any type of sales position, you want to be able to know how to do this stuff. So it might not be the most interesting, like some of the other talks that are coming up, which are going to be great with the slate of people that we have. But I'm excited to go over this with you as the groundwork so that you could really implement the talks after this. So next, time blocking. It's also important to know how much time you need to block off for phone jams. So the average is pretty much you expect to make 25 calls per hour. So if you want to book 10 appointments, you should expect to complete 4 hours of phone time because 25 times 4 equals 100. And again, if it's not making so much sense as I'm doing it and you need a little time to think, remember, this is going to be sent out to you, so don't worry about it. I just want to make sure I go over it in the time that I have. Now, when it comes to the closing percentage, this is when you're going to calculate how often you close a sale compared to a no sale. The longer you do this, the more accurate your numbers will be. So a month is okay, a campaign is great, a year is excellent, depending on how long you're with Cutco, because that's just going to be, that's more data you have to really focus and get those right numbers so that you could set more efficient goals for yourself. So here's just some random numbers I made up, and I made the numbers easy so you could really kind of see and do any crazy numbers. But in this example, if you completed 100 demos in a spring campaign, and out of those 100 demos, you sold out Cutco on 70 of them, that's a 70% closing ratio, which is obviously pretty easy because it's 7 out of 10. But the way you get that number is divide numbers of sales by total demos. So 70 divided by 100 goes 0.7, which is 70% closing percentage. So that means you can expect to sell on 7 out of 10 demos. Now, once you get that, your average order, you're going to calculate how much CPO you sell per customer transaction. Example, let's say you sold 40K for the spring campaign on those 70 orders. We don't count no sales because it wasn't a sale. So only on the number of appointments that you actually made a sale. So you divide total CPO by the number of orders. So 40,000 CPO divided by 70 orders is a 571 average order. Now you have to put it all together. From using the numbers above, if you have a goal of 20K for the month of April, that means you have to process 35 orders because 20,000 CPO divided by 571 average order is 35 orders. Now this is where it gets a little bit technical. You'll have to complete more than 35 appointments. And before I go into that, as you see, as I'm scrolling down, in blue, I put in blue the equations and how you could see, you could input your own numbers when you do get this sent to you in your email. So you have to figure out that you have to complete more than 35 appointments since your closing percentage is 70%, since you don't sell to every person you sit down with. So to figure out the total of appointments that you need, you have to multiply the number of orders by 100, then divide by the total closing percentage. So you multiply it by 100, because that's the percent right there. Like when you work with percentages, the 100 is usually a number. So it's 3,500. And you divide that by your percent, 70%. And that equals 50 appointments. So you have to book 50 appointments if you want to sell on 35 of them. And then you have to figure out how many phone calls that'll take. You see how we're working backwards. I started with phone calls, but now we're working backwards. So if it takes you 10 phone calls to book one appointment, all you have to do is multiply the number of appointments needed by 10. So 50 times 10 is 500 phone calls. And now you'll figure out how much time you'll need to block off in your calendar for phone jams. Remember, the average is about 25 phone calls per hour. So you divide total number of calls by 25, which gets you to 20 hours of phone calls. Now, 20 hours of phone calls might seem like a lot, but remember, we're doing it for a whole month. So that's only 5 hours a week, which is essentially only 2 to 3 phone jams. You could literally take care of that on your team meetings once a week if you really wanted to, and just do 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours per phone jam, and you'll do more than that 20 hours of phoning, and you'll exceed those numbers that you'd set for yourself. Now, one thing I wanted to definitely make sure to go over, because I have a few minutes left, there's an important variable to remember, and it's super important. So we all hate cancellations, right? And reschedules, but they're inevitable. You can't do everything right. You can do everything right in your planning and still not hit your goal because you didn't account for those no-shows or cancellations or reschedules. Because no matter what, a customer is going to get called into work. Something happens, somebody has to pick up a kid, whatever it might be. So the rule of thumb is that you want to schedule 10 to 20% more appointments than needed to account for this variable. So as an example, if you need 50 appointments like we were talking about above, you should schedule between 55 and 60 to get you that little cushion. So 50 times 1.1 is that 10% to get to 55, and 50 times 1.2 is 20% at 60 appointments. So you want to be able to book 60 appointments for that month if you plan on selling that 20K, again, with all of these numbers that we just went over. Now, at the end of the day, we should all have personal and professional goals. Not hitting a goal doesn't mean you failed because you learn new things in the process. By failing to plan, you are planning to fail. We hear that all the time. So making big goals can be scary at times, but you grow when you're outside of your comfort zone. So as we go back up here, like I said, I hope you guys use this. I was just going to go over that, and I decided, I was like, this should definitely be a handout because I went over way too many details and in-depth math equations if you're able to remember that. So I want you to take advantage of it and really work with your own numbers. That's why I put these in blue, so you could input everything yourself once you figure out a little bit of data for yourself. But I wanted to thank the Cutco National, the headquarters, everybody for allowing me to open up the virtual boot camp. I'm so super excited to do it. I hope you guys love the talk, and you're really going to implement all of this stuff once you hear from the rest of these speakers today and tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. And again, thanks so much. I hope you learned a lot. Dana, back to you.